Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into a very serious and sensitive issue that is making global headlines. Israel has issued a warning as Italy makes a bold move by sending a warship to help protect humanitarian aid going into Gaza. This development is not only about one country helping another. It reflects the larger tensions in the Middle East, the international response to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, and the risks of escalation between regional and global powers. The situation is complex, filled with politics, military strategies, and humanitarian concerns, and in this video we are going to carefully break it down so that you can understand why this matters to the world right now. The conflict in Gaza has always been one of the most sensitive and polarizing issues in international politics. It involves Israel's security concerns, Palestinian humanitarian needs, and the reactions of global players like the United States, European Union, Arab states, and others. The most recent wave of tension has drawn even more attention because of how the aid is being handled and how Israel views the involvement of other nations. For Israel, every foreign intervention near Gaza carries the possibility of weakening its control and creating new security risks. For countries like Italy, however, the focus has been to show solidarity with humanitarian missions and to underline the importance of keeping aid supplies safe. When Italy announced that it would send a warship to protect aid shipments bound for Gaza, the message was loud and clear. Italy is one of the major European powers, a NATO member, and a country with historical ties to the Mediterranean region. Sending a warship is not just about guarding aid, it is a political statement. It says that Italy is willing to project power and to take a stance on what is happening in Gaza, even at the risk of angering Israel. That's why Israel's warning is so significant. Israel rarely tolerates the presence of foreign military ships in waters close to its conflict zones, especially when the subject involves Gaza. The Israeli government has long argued that allowing direct foreign military involvement in aid delivery could open doors for weapons smuggling, for weakening Israel's blockade strategy, or for sending a message that its authority is being challenged. This is why officials in Israel have been quick to warn Italy about the implications of such a move. They stress that Israel cannot accept any scenario in which foreign navies operate in a way that undermines its security or disrupts its monitoring of what goes in and out of Gaza. But on the other side, Italy's decision is also influenced by strong domestic and international pressures. Italy, like many European countries, has a population that is deeply sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, and humanitarian groups have been urging their government to take stronger action. Italy's leadership has been under pressure to show that it cares about the humanitarian situation, especially when images and reports from Gaza highlight food shortages, medical crises, and civilian suffering. Sending a warship is not just a military move. It is also a message to its own people that Italy is doing something concrete to protect aid and ensure it reaches the people who need it most. This creates a difficult balance. On one side, Israel insists that security must come first. On the other side, Italy is framing its action as a humanitarian mission. The clash between these two views makes the situation tense. What happens if Israel tries to block or monitor the aid escorted by the Italian warship? What happens if there is a confrontation at sea? These questions show why this is not just about aid. It is about potential military escalation. Looking at the broader context, Israel has always been wary of foreign involvement near Gaza. Over the years, there have been incidents where flotillas carrying aid attempted to break the blockade, most famously the Mavi Marmara case involving Turkey in 2010. That incident ended with deadly clashes, diplomatic fallout, and long-term consequences for Israel's relations with Turkey. Now, with Italy's warship, the situation risks creating another major diplomatic confrontation, but this time it involves a key NATO and EU country which makes it even more complicated. The United States will also be watching closely. America is Israel's strongest ally, but it also cooperates closely with Italy within NATO. The U.S. does not want to see its allies clashing with one another in such a sensitive region. Washington will likely try to mediate, urging both sides to avoid confrontation while keeping the humanitarian aid flowing. Yet the U.S. is also cautious not to appear as if it is pressuring Israel too strongly, because that could upset the delicate alliance. For European politics, Italy's move could set an example. Other countries in the EU may feel encouraged to take similar steps, either diplomatically or militarily, to protect aid shipments. That would increase pressure on Israel, making it appear isolated if it continues to resist international involvement. But it could also lead to dangerous miscalculations at sea, where different navies operate close to one another in contested waters. Even a small misunderstanding could lead to a bigger incident. Another important factor is how Palestinians themselves view this. For many in Gaza, Italy's action is seen as a rare example of a Western country standing up and taking risks for their humanitarian needs. It gives a sense of international recognition and support, something that Palestinians often feel is lacking. However, there are also concerns that any escalation between Italy and Israel could end up worsening the situation on the ground if Israel responds by tightening restrictions or launching new military operations. The humanitarian aspect cannot be ignored. Gaza has been facing one of its worst humanitarian crises in decades, with shortages of electricity, medicine, clean water, and food. International aid is not a luxury. It is a necessity for survival. Humanitarian organizations have repeatedly warned that without secure channels for aid, the civilian population will continue to suffer. Italy's Warship is meant to guarantee that aid gets through safely, but Israel's suspicion is that this could create a loophole for militants to exploit. From a military perspective, the presence of an Italian warship in waters near Gaza changes the dynamics. Israel's navy is highly capable and used to operating freely in those waters. If another nation's warship is present, Israel must adjust its calculations, avoid missteps, and remain aware that any aggressive action could trigger an international crisis. This forces Israel to think more carefully, but it also creates friction because Israel feels its freedom of action is being restricted. Italy, for its part, must also prepare for scenarios where its warship could face challenges. Will it be willing to directly confront Israeli vessels if they attempt to board aid ships? Will it use force, or will it rely on diplomacy? These questions are not easy, and they show the risks Italy is taking. A warship is a strong symbol, but once it is deployed, it must follow through on its mission. Any hesitation or mishap could damage Italy's credibility both at home and abroad. The ripple effects of this decision will also reach other Mediterranean states. Countries like Greece, Spain, and France may feel pressure to take sides or to explain their stance. Arab states such as Egypt and Jordan, which share borders and treaties with Israel, will be watching closely too. Egypt, in particular, plays a key role in controlling the Rafah crossing into Gaza. If Italy's action is successful, it may inspire more demands for Egypt to allow smoother aid flows. It's also worth noting that this development comes at a time when global attention is divided by multiple conflicts and crises. From Ukraine to tensions in Asia, the world's major powers are already stretched thin. Yet, the Gaza crisis keeps resurfacing because of its deep emotional, political, and religious significance. Italy's move ensures that the issue cannot be ignored, and Israel's warning ensures that the story will not fade quietly. In the media, the way this situation is framed will also matter. Some outlets will portray Italy as a humanitarian champion, standing up to ensure that aid reaches people in desperate need. Others will highlight Israel's perspective, emphasizing the risks of weapons smuggling and the dangers of weakening security measures. This battle of narratives will shape public opinion, which in turn influences how governments act. For ordinary people watching from around the world, the key question is whether this move will actually help the people of Gaza. Will the warship succeed in making aid deliveries safer, or will it provoke more tensions that could disrupt aid altogether? Unfortunately, in conflicts like this, humanitarian efforts often get entangled with politics and military calculations, making it hard for simple solutions to succeed. At this stage, both Israel and Italy are likely to hold back from direct confrontation. Neither side wants to escalate into open conflict, but the warning from Israel should be taken seriously. It reflects real concerns about security, sovereignty, and the potential for unintended consequences. For Italy, this is a test of its diplomatic skill as much as its military readiness. The coming weeks will show whether this standoff remains just a war of words or whether it develops into something more dangerous. The global community, including the United Nations and the European Union, will probably step in to encourage dialogue. There may be attempts to set up agreed protocols for aid delivery that satisfy both humanitarian needs and security concerns. If that happens, Italy's bold move could end up leading to a positive outcome by forcing new discussions. But if things go wrong, the risks are high. A single clash at sea could spiral into a diplomatic crisis between Israel and Italy, damage NATO unity, and create new instability in the Mediterranean. It could also worsen the humanitarian crisis in Gaza instead of improving it. That's why this story is so important and why so many people are watching carefully. In conclusion, the warning from Israel and the decision by Italy to send a warship reflect a clash between two powerful narratives, security and humanitarianism. Both are legitimate concerns, but reconciling them has always been one of the hardest challenges in the Gaza conflict. The outcome of this latest development will tell us a lot about how the world deals with these challenges going forward. So, what do you think about this situation? Is Italy making the right decision by sending a warship to protect aid? Or is Israel justified in its warning about security risks? The truth may lie somewhere in between, but one thing is clear. The people of Gaza desperately need help, and the world is struggling to find a way to provide it without triggering even more conflict. And that wraps up today's deep dive into this critical story. Thank you for watching and for staying engaged with global issues that truly matter. Don't forget to like the video, share it with others who care about understanding world events, and subscribe to the channel for more detailed analyses on conflicts, politics, and international developments. Your support helps us continue to bring you thoughtful and clear explanations on the issues shaping our world today.